Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, last week it was Governor Ed Rendell. Now we have a response from a highly respected state senator who happens to be the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. And then highways, more money for highways. What's the status of highway construction in the state of Pennsylvania? All of that following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, we continue with out-of-state budget. I guess we're on 7, going on 8 weeks. Joining me is Senator Jake Corman. He's chairman of the Senate Appropriation Committee. He's a Republican. We had Governor Ed Rendell. He's a Democrat. Senator, welcome as always. Glad to see you here.
Great to be with you, Terry.
You're working a little hard these days. I mean, trying to get this budget straightened out.
Yeah, that's the first year Appropriations Chairman. I'm not sure this was the year I wanted to begin my career as head of the budget, but nevertheless, this is where we are. It's big issues. I mean, it's a difficult time, and and our issues, how we handle this year's budget is going to impact future budgets. So this is why it's taking so long, and I'm sure everyone's getting frustrated. We're getting frustrated. Hopefully this will get done soon, but we have to get it right. It's too important to the future of Pennsylvania. Yeah, well, let's go with some specifics. I think as our viewers know and everyone around the state knows who's followed this, that there's sort of two fundamental disagreements. What is the top line? What is it that you're willing to spend? The governor last week came out with a $28 billion figure. You all on the other side, just for the sake, as a way to put it, said, no, we're not at that figure yet. Where do you think the budget process stands now in terms of the dollars? I think we got to get that nailed down first. What are you willing to spend? Well, I think we're getting closer. I mean, the governor was up closer to 29 in June and early July, and so were the House Democrats in the bill that they passed. We were always down in the low 27. So, we're willing to come up, obviously, from there. Obviously, the governor's not going to support a budget that's at 27. He's made that clear. So, if we can get them down into the mid-27s in that general vicinity, I think, and they're getting closer to there, then I think we can come up with a deal that projects out to the future. That's something that the people of Pennsylvania can afford. All
right. Now, I want to come to the timing of it a little later. As you know, it looks like we'll go beyond Labor Day unless you have some breaking news you want to give us for our,
unfortunately, no.
Our viewers, but we'll get to that.
Even if we had a handshake, we probably wouldn't be able to put it all together before Labor Day. But
that's true. It would take a while. But let's talk then about taxes. Now, the voters of this, the citizens of this state, in survey after survey, said no general tax hikes. Right. They may accept some niche taxes to try to bridge this gap, and you know what those niche taxes are. You've talked about them on a number of occasions. Smokeless tobacco, the governor has talked about that. Certain kinds of tobacco products are on the table. Table games are on the table. Taxing Marcellus Shale, that's a natural gas formation. It runs in a good part of the state. Are any of those, in your opinion, as the lead player in your caucus, are they on the table legitimately at this point?
I think so, because if you're going to spend up into the mid to high 27s, you're going to need reoccurring revenues at some point in time to balance this budget, not only this year but in the future. And I think what people have to realize is the difficulty of this is not only do we lose $3 billion in revenue from last year, but we're projecting flat growth for next year, which means those revenues aren't coming back. In fact, our projections, actually the governor's projections, is going to be probably close to 2012 or 13, just until we get back to 2008 revenues levels. So, we have to put something in place. The stimulus money that we're getting now sort of mitigates that emergency. But that goes away in 2 years, and I don't think we can necessarily count on it anymore, although there's some talk of it. So if you're going to spend at a level in the mid to high 27s, as probably will be the landing area of this budget, you're going to need some sort of reoccurring revenue that helps pay the costs in the out years as well. Yeah, I asked the governor last week about this question. I said, look, there is always the possibility that unemployment will rise even if the recession has bottomed out. There's a big debate in Washington right now about from people who know more than I do, perhaps more than you do as well, about whether this recession is over or not, or whether it's bottomed out. Is it possible that next year's budget situation, because of revenue declines and higher unemployment, could be worse than this year? Is it at least possible? I don't think next year will be as bad as the year after when the federal money goes away. Because we have about $2.7 billion of federal money in this year's budget, and we're going to have about $2 billion worth of federal money in next year's budget. That's money that goes into our state costs and our state reoccurring costs. So when that money evaporates, then we have to make up for it.
I see what you mean.
And so next year I don't think will be too bad.
Quite as bad.
But the year after could be really, really difficult.
All right, I'm talking with Senator Corman. He's chair of the Appropriations Committee in the State Senate. We'll be back following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program with Senator Corman. He chairs the Appropriation Committee in the Senate. Senator, let's talk about a couple of other aspects of this. The governor keeps saying that education is the bottom line, that, you know, he started with over $400 million, he's going down to $300 million. That would be in additional funding to be used out of the stimulus money. What are the, I mean, programmatically, not dollar-wise, what do you think are the stumbling blocks programmatically?
Well, I mean, it really comes down to a dollar and cents issue. I mean, the governor, we agree with the governor, and we want to put as much money as we possibly can into education. Obviously, that's one of the most important things we do in state government is funding education. Now, you know, the governor, if you take all the money that we get from the federal government this year, plus the money that we're putting in the state level, I mean, the governor wants to put in about $1.5 billion new dollars. You know, that's new dollars. You know, we're talking closer to $1 billion. You know, so we're not cutting it, you know, any more than he is, but we're just not going up to the level that he wants to go. And so that's really where the rub is how much higher in basic ed are we going to go this year? You know, it's obviously a difficult year. You know, it's a year where, you know, again, we lost $3 billion in revenue. So the fact that we're still able to combine federal dollars and state dollars and get to close to $1 billion in new dollars for this coming year, I think is pretty good for basic education. Now, he wants to go even higher. I respect that. I mean, you know, it's not really that he's wrong or we're wrong. It's not, you know, he wants to do bad things with the money, and he wants to put it towards a good area. Our philosophy is, you know, this is what we can afford right now. And to still be able to put $1 billion of new money into our school districts this year, we think is pretty good. Would we like to do more? Sure. We'd always like to do more. But we think this is what the taxpayers can afford. And so that's really what it comes down to. How much further can we go and still balance in the out years?
I want to go to the sort of the dynamic at work here a little bit. Sure. I noticed that there was a lot of emotion and a lot of tension and a lot of tough rhetoric in the Senate a week or so ago when you all, you know, tried to do the override of the line item veto that Governor Rendell used to restore some of the money. Is that about as contentious? I mean, I followed the Senate for a lot of years. That got pretty hot and heated in that chamber for you guys. I mean, normally you don't do that. What was going on there?
I mean, I wasn't back there. I wasn't in the Senate in the early 90s when it was a 25-25 split, and they had some pretty famous heated discussions. But you know, our belief was if there was 92 lines the governor vetoed in Senate Bill 850 that we agree on, what he wants to spend. You know, if we can't pass what we agree on, you know, how are we ever get to the points where we disagree on? And so our philosophy was, let's get these things passed. I realize it's not the perfect way to do a budget, but that's sort of out the door anyway because you signed 850, which is a hodgepodge already, and vetoed good parts of it. So let's take some of the areas, particularly areas where social services or areas that, you know, like higher education that you know, we may not have 100% agreement on. We could still go back and when we do an ultimate budget, change those numbers. But, you know, students are lining up for going to college, and they want to know what they're going to get from FIA. Child care, those were blue lined. And I guess what concerned us is, you know, the governor said, I mean, his words when he vetoed these line items were, even though I agree with them, I need them for leverage. Well, you know, leverage is real people's lives.
So your point was that let's free this set of hostages. It seems like there's been a hostage at every level of the debate, right?
You know, I'll just say I don't like that term too much, and we've used it. So, but nevertheless, you're right. I mean, look, these first it was the state employees were sort of in the middle because they weren't getting paid, and now it's folks who are getting subsidization for child care. I have facilities in my district have called me and said, we can't make payroll this week. Well, that has a major impact on people's lives. If we agree on the spending level or close to it, at least let's get that out the door, and we can still come back and finish up at a later date.
But the rhetoric was pretty heated in that chamber.
The rhetoric was heated.
And that's a little. But now I know. Hold on, I got to ask you this question.
Sure.
But I noticed this week there's a little, and I talked to some reporters in Harrisburg, a little change in the tenor of the rhetoric. Is that, I mean, that looks like a good sign. I mean, that you're not using, and I know, look, these are very emotional issues, and heck, it's democracy. If you want to scream and shout a little bit, nothing really wrong with that in the end, I guess.
In the end, I think that there's much harsher rhetoric over the years in other forms of democracy as well, as we've seen on TV where they've actually had fistfights. We haven't come anywhere near that.
Well, you had one in not in your chamber, but in the House had a little fistfight.
But I think things are coming together. I have some optimism that as this thing drags on, people are willing to go areas that they may not have been able to do in June.
Well, before I let you go,
sure.
Let's talk about that. I know projections on time frames. Some have suggested this could go on for months and months. Others have said maybe by September. It's going to be tough to get this done, at least in the next week or two. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, to have a final budget for the governor to sign, I don't think it can happen in a week or two, just because, again, once you get a handshake deal on where you're going to spend, which we're not quite there yet, it's going to take a couple weeks to put together. Again, another reason why to override some of these vetoes and get these services out there, because even when we agree, we're going to have a couple weeks to get it done. So, I'm optimistic that the discussions that have been going on informally have gotten to the point where we're getting close. We're not there yet by any stretch of imagination. We still got a lot of work to do, but it seems like we're moving in the right direction finally.
Final question. Big issue, the pensions. Some 35 municipal pensions are below the 50% funding level. We have 3,000 municipal pensions. How we got that many is another question for another time. But it looks like, and as we tape this, the Senate has not yet voted on the pension bill, which would include a sales tax, an additional 1% for Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Temporarily, it's a 5-year deal, and then it would go away. Is that likely to pass, do you think?
Yes.
It is.
I think by the time this airs, it probably will have passed. I think we're going to try to do it later today. In fact,
and go back to the House.
Go back to the House.
Have you had any chance to chat with House leaders about the amendments that were added, about certain aspects of it?
No, but in the Finance Committee, when it passed Monday in the Senate, all the Philadelphia delegation praised the bill. Then the Allegheny County representative praised the bill. So I would imagine that getting that kind of support, and those are two big areas that have had some issues with this bill, that this will be something that that they'll concur with.
All right, there you have it, the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee giving us an update. All right, I don't know if there's a more important topic than highways, road construction. I mean, it's important. You can't have a modern economy without modern roads. Would you agree with that,
I would
Senator?
agree.
All right, we'll be back with that following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, we're going to talk about an important topic. You can't have a modern economy without a modern highway system, and it has to work. I think we would all agree there. Joining me, as often is the case, sitting across from me is Bob Latham. He's the Executive VP with the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors, and Jamie Van Buren. He's the Vice President of New Enterprise Stone and Lime Company. I got that all out.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, look, welcome as always. All right, Bob, I want to start with you. Look, my premise here, and I don't get into this, I don't take sides, but how can you have a modern economy without a highway system that is efficient, that allows goods and services to move? Tell me.
Well, absolutely, Terry, and You know, the other thing about it is a safe and efficient highway system.
I forgot the safe part.
A lot of people don't understand the fact that people are very interested in, when you talk to them about what are their concerns on roads, it's are they safe? And what happens is as the system gets outmoded and the amount of cars and the amount of trucks overwhelm the design of the system, then you don't have a safe and efficient and a modern highway system for the economy, like you were saying.
Yeah, and Jamie, especially in a state like ours, which is an older state, many of these roads were constructed, you know, you're in the business. I mean, 50 and 60 and 70 years ago, you'll tell me probably longer. Look at the PA Turnpike. I mean, you know what, a post-World War II deal.
Predated the interstate highway system.
So we've got to make the investment. Now, the question is, how do we make the investment, right?
Exactly.
Now, so let's talk about this. What are the current, talk a little bit about the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, a.k.a. the stimulus package. I think I got that right. Go ahead.
The stimulus package went in place earlier this year. PennDOT has done a champion's job of getting the money out. It's putting people back to work. We've been employing people this year more than last year. We have a backlog, as do most contractors, that's a little better than last year, which means people are going to be working, and they're going to be working longer this year. We are fixing bridges, we are paving roads, we are getting things done with that money. Can't really speak to what else is happening with the stimulus, but most people that I talk to, when you talk about stimulus, they understand that the money going into infrastructure is getting spent and it is employing people. It's doing what the stimulus money was supposed to do, get people back to work.
Yeah, now, as someone who's followed this pretty carefully, there are aspects of the program that are controversial. There's money being spent that not job creation and not helping overall the long term. But no one, I've heard no one criticize the road and transportation aspects of it because it has a short term, it puts people to work, but it has a huge long term investment into the infrastructure which is necessary for a modern economy.
Well, look at some of the issues of the day. Healthcare reform, cap and trade, climate control. There's a lot of controversy. There are ideological differences. This is the one program that everybody agrees on. Nobody says, gee, we really shouldn't invest money in our infrastructure. We shouldn't do that. Everybody agrees that this is the one program that we should be doing. So there is no ideological difference here.
And no political differences that I've seen. Okay, well, let's talk about then the big question, it seems to me, is once this money is spent, and I want to talk in the next segment about what will happen in Pennsylvania, and there's still an open question, but will it be sustained in general? I mean, that's the big question. Does that,
the issue with the stimulus was a short-term program. It put about $1 billion into Pennsylvania's road program. As Jamie said, PennDOT did a fantastic job getting that work out there. The work's being done. It's propped up the industry. We would have been in a disaster because of the housing and commercial building market. That all goes away next year. So unless one of two things happen, Congress has to act and reauthorize the federal highway program now, not 18 months from now, but now. And do it in a way that Chairman Jim Oberstar from Minnesota has a major bill, and do it that way, and not just bump it along in its current format.
I want to talk about that, Bill. We're going to run to a break, and I want to get into this business of the unresolved highway funding question in the state. You guys can bring us up to date on that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back. Jamie, Bob, let's talk a little bit about this business of the reauthorization, about what we're going to do long term for highway funding? And then we'll get to the PA angle here.
Sure. A good portion of the money that goes to pay for roads in Pennsylvania comes from what's known as the Federal Highway Trust Fund. And it's a national program. It has to be reauthorized every 6 years. It expires September 30th. It's been studied now. The infrastructure needs have been studied by 2 national commissions. The information is all there. The House Chairman of the Infrastructure Committee, Oberstar from Minnesota, has put a bill in, and the administration is saying, let's sit on this for 18 months. Yeah. Well, if you do that, now PennDOT can't plan projects going out. Companies like New Enterprise,
I can't plan my workforce. I can't plan from a training standpoint. I can't plan capital investments. I don't make the long-term capital investments that help to spur the economy on a go-forward basis. We have to continue to fix things. When we buy a piece of equipment, it's a 20-year piece of equipment. If there's a stimulus program that expires 12 months from now, how do I buy a 20-year piece of equipment?
You're not going to do that.
Fix what I have.
This is the point. The stimulus has done some good things, putting people back to work, fixing some of our roads and bridges here in Pennsylvania very short term. If we don't do this, if Congress doesn't act on this reauthorization as soon as possible, and I mean, now, that's all going to come to a halt, and the people that Jamie has brought back on and others have brought back on to work, well, they'll be laid off next year. And that'll further Jake Corman's problem with the state budget, because he'll be paying for them on layoffs.
All right, we have about a minute and a half left. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on. The federal government rejected the tolling of Route 80, and that had some unpopularity to it, particularly up in that region serviced by Route 80. But there will be a substantial decrease in the amount of state money that goes in. Is that correct?
There's about $400 million that will not be available if I-80 doesn't get tolled.
Or the state doesn't provide money, find some other way.
Or they don't find some other avenue. So that's going to put the spend in PennDOT maybe $1.5 billion.
It's about a 50% cut. So think about the number of people that were employed by the stimulus package and divide that number in half. They'll be on layoff next year.
All right, so basically we still have yet not figured out how to inject state funding into the highway construction and repair, maintenance and repair program. Is that where we stand with this?
I'm afraid so.
Without doing something with user fees and increasing revenue in some way, there's not going to be a way to spend more money. And if we're not spending money, we're not fixing the 50 to 70-year-old pieces of infrastructure that you talked about earlier, and we're not employing people.
Right,
3 years ago, the Pennsylvania Economy League did a benchmark study of Pennsylvania. They said we need inflation-sensitive sources of revenue. We need to do some public-private partnerships and some other things, and the information's there. It's just a matter of doing it.
All right, Bob gets the last word. We'll see you next week for another edition. Stay well.